Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of Neighbors from Hell and revenge stories. In today's title story, OP's neighbor thinks the neighborhood is a good place to do drag racing at midnight, and he eventually ends up getting what he deserves. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, Guy Gets Arrested and His Car Impounded. It all started earlier last week. I just went to bed at around 10 and I had fallen into a peaceful sleep, only to be awoken at about 11:45 by the sound of a car with one of those loud fart can mufflers flooring it down my street. Alright, okay, I can handle it on occasion. Maybe it is just the kids a few streets over messing around with their tuners, or some moron on a crotch rocket motorcycle. And by the way guys, I feel personally offended by that last word. Anyway, fast forward to the next night. I go to bed after studying my ass off for a chemistry test tomorrow, and all of a sudden, there goes the same car again, this time past midnight at 12:30ish. This time I was kinda irritated because it startled me. The next morning my dad asks me if I heard the car, to which I reply, yes. He tells me that he was walking by the window when he heard the motor, so he peered outside and saw a car with squarish head and taillights floor it down our street. I asked several of my best friends in the neighborhood if they heard it, and sure enough, they did, including my friend that lives 2 streets over. The next day I am playing with my cat in the living room after dinner and I hear the same muffler, this time driving slowly down my street. I opened the blinds and caught a glimpse of a black BMW M3 drive up a driveway of a house at the end of my street. This house in particular has a lot of college parties because sometimes I can see drunk and high people stumbling around through the big glass windows, sometimes naked. Surprise, surprise, later that evening before it got dark, I drove past the house and wrote down the license plate number, make and model of the car. Sure enough, later that night, our good old friend Speedy Gonzalez comes drag racing down my street again. This time I parked my car down on the street and filmed him flooring his BMW down my street. At this point I am done. Your 3 strikes are up, buddy. This means war. 1 day passes without sight nor sound of the BMW. By this time it is Friday, the day when that house commonly has parties. Now for the revenge part of the story, little does this guy know my ex-girlfriend's dad is a cop. Since I dated his daughter, we got to know each other fairly well. Anyways, after dinner, sure enough, Mr. Speed Demon comes rolling up to the house, followed by truckloads of other scummy looking college students. I text my ex asking for her dad's number. I give him a call and explain the situation. He told me to send him a text with the video, plate number, make, model and the address of the party house, along with the time range Mr. Too Fast Too Furious leaves, so he can email it directly to the dispatch officer. Later that night he replies that a unit is set up at the end of my street, waiting for Dr. Leadfoot to come rocketing down my street, and sure enough, it happens. This time at about 1 o'clock I go back to sleep, hoping the cop caught him. In the morning, after sleeping in, I check my texts and sure enough, my ex's dad pulls through. It ends up they caught him speeding, intoxicated in possession of MJ, disturbing the peace and with illegal modifications on his car. Which, to be exact, meant no muffler. Lastly I heard, he is now paying some hefty tickets and fines and spending a bit of time in jail with his nice car impounded for a DUI. And Ripe Stars, I am wondering if you ever had any car enthusiast neighbors who took it a step too far. If there were any neighbors like that, what have you done against them? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, these 2 things help my channel tremendously. The next one is titled, Don't Mess with a Man's Car, a story of belated parking lot revenge. Years ago, I lived in a coastal city and became friends with a guy who owned a boat. He kept his boat docked near a popular tourist area and the garage he used was often full due to the crowds. As a slip owner, he had a pass that would give him priority at a private garage entrance, so he could skip the lines and be more certain of getting a parking spot. This is not uncommon for private garages that offer monthly passes or passes to employees. Also, due to the crowds, this garage had a computer that would count the number of cars going in and the cars going out. It would not let any vehicles into the garage if there were no spots available. One day my friend used his pass to get into the garage knowing it was nearly full. After doing a full lap of all levels, he realized the only remaining spot was next to an older poop brown metallic Corvette with vanity plates that had parked about a foot over the line. Well, sucks to be that guy, my friend pulled his little SUV in, blocking the driver's door of the Corvette. After all, parking is scarce and this guy did not pay for 2 spots. So, petty revenge. Later that night, after a day on the water, he returned to find that the Corvette owner apparently did not like having his door blocked and retaliated by keying the side of my friend's Cherokee. He filed a claim, lost his deductible and got the side of his Jeep repainted. About a year later, he bought another boat and was working to restore the cabin. He drove into the garage as he always does and starts looking for a spot. When, what does he see? The same poop brown Corvette with the same vanity plate. Well, the heavens were certainly thinking of justice today. He got out of his Jeep and opened the tailgate to peruse the plethora of instruments that were at his disposal. After all, he had a boatload of tools to restore his old boat. Screwdriver? Not much you can do with that. Hammer? Too cliché. Belt sander? No power cable. Battery-powered nail gun? Folks, we have a winner. A few quick minutes later, the fiberglass body of the Corvette was perforated by nails. Just putting nails through body panels is hardly fair to the nail gun. After all, nails are supposed to connect things together. They must fulfill their purpose. We would not want those nails to suffer an existential crisis, would we? So, the doors, hood, boot lid, pop-up headlights and even the fuel cap were all nailed shut. Do not F with another man's right, revenge will be served and it may be very cold indeed. And Ripe Stars, I don't know about you, but this story almost applies for nuclear revenge in my opinion. But then again, the line between nuclear and pro-revenge is often a very fine line. Either way, I would love to hear from you, which of the revenge subreddits do you enjoy the most? Petty revenge, nuclear revenge, regular revenge or pro-revenge? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled, My ex-wife learned the hard way to not ignore a court summons. A bit of background, I was married to a woman for 15 years and ended up divorcing her because she liked to sleep with other guys. Which does not really sound ideal for a marriage. Anyway, while it took me 6 years to stumble onto this fact, she worked from home, I commuted 2 hours each way into the city, I owe it to her being either a sociopath or a narcissist, or both, why not? She could absolutely turn on and off the charm and could come up with lies staring you right in the eyes. Hindsight is 20 out of 20. Let's call her V, short for Voldemort, as one time when I was talking about her after the separation, I referred to her as she who must not be named and the nickname stuck with all my friends and family. During the marriage, my ex and I were best friends with another couple and for this post we will call them Sam and Marie. Sam was still or is my best friend, Marie was V's best friend. Marie had found out about V's plans to cheat on me prior to me finding out and told V that she couldn't condone infidelity and their friendship would end if V did cheat on me. But no, Marie did not tell me and I don't blame her for not doing so. When I finally found out V was having a Facebook affair, if you're going to have an online affair, don't do it while married to a computer expert, with some dude in CA, we lived in Massachusetts, it was just 2 weeks before V was flying him out and putting him up in a hotel for 3 days. I spent those 2 weeks getting a lawyer, a PI and my exit strategy together. I left her the weekend after their hotel stay, she would spend the days with him and come home for the afternoon/evening without a shred of guilt showing in her actions. The private investigator having gotten pics and video of them leaving the hotel and eating lunch together and heading back to the hotel. I first stayed at Sam and Marie's in their in-law basement apartment, eventually moving to a small apartment back in the town where V lived. Fast forward 9 months and I am divorced from V. Why it was so short to divorce is another tale worthy of this subreddit. We had one daughter, let's call her Rebecca. She was 13 at the time, between us still at home, and we are trying shared custody and live about 1/4 of a mile apart. There are other kids from the marriage, but they were living apart from us at that time and don't play a part in this part of the whole story. We had acquired a lake house during the marriage and had it listed to sell, and we had it written into the divorce agreement to split the proceeds, but paying half the mortgage on that and the rent on my apartment was really stretching me thin financially. One day Marie emails me, subject line in all caps, "V just tried to get me fired." Long story short, V emailed Marie's boss claiming that Marie was gossiping about V on sales calls to customers, but her boss knew it was BS and told V as much. Wisely, Marie did not mess around waiting to see what was next. She went to the local courthouse that day and filed for an anti-harassment order against V. It took several visits to the judge, as V chose to ignore multiple summons to court so that the judge could hear her side of the story. Eventually, the judge granted the order because V never showed up to court. During this time, V called 911 on me multiple times, one time claiming I put a letter bomb in her mailbox, and the other 2 times I supposedly had entered her apartment without her permission. The letter bomb accusation was due to me posting a link to shipyourenemiesglitter.com on Facebook months before and subsequently mailing her a thick bundle of forms to sign. Police were called and I had to go to V's apartment and open the letter in front of the police. Needless to say, there was no glitter, let alone a bomb. Oddly enough, this accusation came just days after there had been an actual bomb threat called into the town hall, which is quite funny that. The 2 times I had gone into her apartment had both been to drop off Rebecca's book bag when she had forgotten it at my apartment. Both times I had texts from V granting me permission to open the door and put the book bag inside. She would then text me after I had done so, trying to revoke permission. To this day, I think V thinks that if she deletes a message on her end, the message is deleted on my end. Even though kids will be kids and Rebecca did forget her book bag at my place on at least one other subsequent occasion, I did not fall for V's ruse a 3rd time. All forgotten book bags were delivered by Rebecca and I meeting halfway between the apartments. Also included with the multiple 911 calls were multiple minor child wellness checks on evenings when I had Rebecca at my apartment. It is so much fun having to explain to your child why the police are showing up at 8 o'clock at night to check to see if she is okay. Basically, V was trying to get me frustrated and react badly. Throughout this whole mess, Sam and Marie have been lifesavers to me and Rebecca, hosting and cooking weekly family dinners for us. They are Rebecca's godparents and just being absolute rock steady in their support and tolerance of the situation. Around this time, V filed for sole custody. At the strong urging of my lawyer, I insisted on a guardian ad litem (GAL) being appointed to represent Rebecca's best interests, her being a minor child. Of course, the parents must pay the fees of the GAL. At this point my finances are really getting worrisome, so I write an email to V saying we need to drop the price of the lake house and get that sold regardless of profit. I needed that albatross off from around my neck so I could continue to afford to live where I could co-parent Rebecca as well as fight the custody battle. So there I am, going deeper into debt, cannot pay rent and mortgage long term, and V is starting another court battle for full custody. With no other choice, I move back in with Sam and Marie so I can continue to pay my lawyer and keep fighting. About a week after I am settled back in with Sam and Marie, I hear from Rebecca that V's glass patio table was smashed the previous night. I was in NH that evening with witnesses, so it couldn't have been me. I was paying for Rebecca's cell phone and we have Live 360, so we could know where each other were at any time due to an earlier threat by V to take the youngest kids and move to California to be with the idiot from Facebook. Plus, it had history, so I could at least prove my phone was an NH. Rebecca says she knows I was an NH and tells me she will tell her mom it wasn't me. The next day I was served with a restraining order, RO, claiming that I had vandalized V's patio furniture and that she still felt afraid due to the letter bomb incident. The cops knew it was BS, but the judge had no knowledge of the incident when V filed the RO and had to take her at her word. The RO was for 10 days and then I could show up in court and contest it being continued. The officer who served the RO explained that he had to confiscate any firearms and licenses. While I did have a recently acquired Class A concealed carry license, actually from a couple's firearms course that was an anniversary gift from V the previous year, I hadn't had any firearms other than a BB gun of Rebecca's. The officer left with just a Class A license, smiling as he said he was pretty sure I was not going to go on a rampage with a BB gun. The first thing I did the next day was to go to the police station and request all incident reports that involved me since I left her. I knew of 7 incidents, but the desk sergeant informed me that they had 19 incident reports from V. He talked to me a bit, clearly trying to get a feel for what kind of person I was and just what was going on. We parted company with him assuring me that the patrol officers would now know what was going on and the PD would do right by me so long as I kept my cool. Fair enough. 2 nights before the court appearance to contest the RO, Sam and Marie and I are sitting on their porch drinking some beer and brainstorming about what I'm going to say to the judge. I'm a bit discouraged because I know it's going to be a he said she said situation and I am living in Massachusetts. If your chromosomes don't match, you are a second-class citizen when it comes to parental rights in Massachusetts. Plus V deserves an Oscar for how well she plays the victim. It was not looking good. My only hope was if V decided the RO itself was enough to make me look bad to the GAL and not show up and let the RO expire. Mary suddenly said, "Hey, let me see the RO." I handed it over to her. "Hey, this is my judge. She's the judge that granted me the anti-harassment order against V." "You're kidding." Sam and I looked at each other in amazement. "I swear it is, let me go get it." Marie goes inside and comes back a few minutes later with her court order. And sure enough, it is the same judge. My grin felt like it was going to split my lips, and now I knew exactly what to do. Now for the meat of the story. The court date to contest the RO arrived and I am there first thing, just me. No lawyer because he had to appear in court elsewhere. I strongly hoped that V wouldn't show up, but unfortunately she did, with someone other than her divorce lawyer. And before court was in session, her new lawyer approached me and offered to let the no contact order lapse. But he wanted a do not abuse order left in place. I politely declined her offer, stating I had done nothing to warrant either order, and I said that I wanted the judge to hear my argument. V's lawyer was taken aback by this a bit and then shrugged as if to say, "It's your funeral," and walked back to where V was sitting. We went in front of the judge and V told her side of the story and I started telling mine, introducing all the incident reports from the police department, but V and her lawyer did not have copies of all of them, so the judge sent us back to the gallery to await second call while V and her lawyer reviewed the reports. When we were called back, the judge started to go into the content of the police reports and I stated that the content was almost irrelevant, but she insisted on going through them. During that, V emphasized the 2 incidents where I briefly entered V's apartment with her permission, but she characterized them as me doing so without her permission. I said that if necessary, I would be able to provide the communications where she gave me permission, but I didn't have them with me today. When going through the first police report from the night I found out about the online affair, wherein V claimed I had brain lesions, V also tried to characterize me as having multiple personality disorder as told to her by our shared primary care physician. The judge asked her with no little incredulity, "His doctor told you this without his permission?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at me puzzled. I shrugged and said, while slowly shaking my head in disbelief, "I have a very close relationship with my doctor, and I highly doubt he would violate HIPAA. She looked a little nonplussed, but I think she got the message that V was not being entirely truthful. As that was the last police report to go through, I reminded her that my point was not the content, but that I thought V was using the courts to harass and intimidate me and to make me look bad to the GAL. And I brought up that this is not out of character for V, as she has an anti-harassment order in place against her, put there by Your Honor, Your Honor. The judge blinked at that bit of info. I gave her the details and reminded her that V declined to show up at the multiple hearings. As I recounted the particulars of Marie's story, the judge squinted her eyes more and more, and her frown got deeper and deeper. She turned to V and her voice was slow cold fury. "Do you have an anti-harassment order in place against you?" V's voice was so small and weak. "Yes, Your Honor." So I wanted to look at V's face to see her reaction, but I kept my eyes locked on the judge. The judge pointed at V. "Why didn't you show up to the hearings?" A pause as V struggled to find some excuse. "Because I didn't want to associate with that." But the judge waved hers to silence. I think that was the turning point, as I think she was going to grant their request for the "do not abuse", but she turned to me and said sternly, "I think there's a bit of this going on both sides, but clearly she wants you to stay out of her apartment. Never again, Your Honor. Restraining order terminated." And with a bang of her gavel, we were done. Because the RO was terminated, legally that meant it never happened. I got my Class A concealed carry license back the next day and ultimately won the custody battle. A large part of which was the termination of the RO, but also due to V's subsequent increasingly poor emotional and verbal treatment of Rebecca. And ripe stars, with this we have unfortunately reached the end of today's video. However, if you cannot get enough of my stories, then I would highly suggest you to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will show up at any moment in the left corner of the screen, which includes over 1000 ripe stories. In addition, if you would like to share one of your own stories, then please head on over to r/ripe stories on Reddit, where you can post your own story and there is a good chance that I might read it in a video. In addition, please also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos that you won't find on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, your daily support is very much appreciated, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.